Let's talk a little bit about deployment. So now what we want to talk about is we've already got our application set up. We've saved our job and everything. Now we want to set it up so that we don't get called at 2 o'clock in the morning because the system goes down. So let's talk about some of the utilities that are available for your system. We're going to talk about some of your user lists, your backups and restores, upgrading the firmware, as well as, we don't actually talk about the auto starting the system, but we've already mentioned it. It's going underneath system startup, and you can have it use a certain job that's already been saved in the memory of your camera, as well as go online. And then we're also going to talk a little bit about the vision view. Just a little bit, because we're going to let you guys play with it instead. It's more of an intuitive type product instead of belaboring points. So what you're going to do is you're going to see 2 menus on there that's really going to be of use for you. There's going to be the system menu and the sensor menu. Now the sensor menu is going to be about the camera that you're currently logged onto, whether it be the actual camera itself, whether it be the emulator, whatever. Whatever's your current view there, it's going to tell you information about it. It's going to do things like your network settings. So this is one way, if you're already logged onto your camera, that you can change the name of it, you can change what the IP address is. This is also where you have the telnet port. By default it's 23, so that's how it knows which port it's going to use for native mode commands. This is also where you would turn on whether you're using EIP or Profinet. You can't turn both on at the same time. Makes sense, or you're really going to have 2 PLCs controlling your line. Now you can also go in and set up the date and time settings. Insight itself does not have a clock chip. There's no oscillator or anything on it. It uses its CPU clicks to determine the time. If I don't have it tied to anything, when it comes up, it just goes back to some default time back in 1970. You can go in there and change it when you power cycle the camera, pull it back up again, then you got to go reset it. Otherwise, what you can do is you can tie it to an SMTP time server. So an SMTP is your simple network time protocol, and it goes out and it will grab whatever the current time is, the time and the date, and set it up for you. You can also say how often do you want it to refresh. Right now it would be set up for 100, well, it was set up for 120 minutes, which means every 2 hours it just re-ups itself. You don't want it too often. But what happens is, because not all the CPU clicks are exactly the same, it's going to start drifting over time. So you want it, depending on how accurate you want your time to be, you want to, at least once a day or something, pull it back in so that you're resetting what the time should be. You also have these user access settings. These are your user list. Okay, this is where you're going to be given access, or you're saying, how much control do I want that user to have? By default, you're given 3 users. You're giving admin, monitor, and operator. Okay, all of those are lowercase, and there is no password by default on them. When I take a look at it, my admin is going to have full access. What that means is I can add tools, subtract tools, I can go in and out of the custom view, I can change permissions on the camera. I have full access to it. Also, my admin has, its view is normal. What that means is I can go in and out of the spreadsheet. Custom view, spreadsheet, custom view, spreadsheet. I have FTP-R and FTP-W privileges, so I have read and write privileges. FTP-R means that I have the ability to load a job, read the job, and FTP-W means I have the ability to save the job. I have the ability to write the job. I also have online-offline ability, so the admin's able to go online and offline. And finally, I also, by default, do not have the ability to save the job online. Now you might say, why doesn't the admin do it? Well, because we just added it. I think in either 4.8 or 4.9 we just added it. We did not want to break people's security that they already had. So if you want to give yourself that permission, you have to go in and enable it. So whenever we do something that we're adding some functionality to it, we always leave what the default is so we don't break any current implementation of it. Sound good? So that's the admin, full of everything. The next step down is operator. Now your operator is going to have, what do they call it? Protected access. So protected access really means I'm only seeing this custom view. I do not have the ability to add tools or remove tools. If I have any edit commands, any of those control commands, I can get to those. Buttons, pull down list, edit commands, I can still do all those, but I don't have access to the spreadsheet. My view is custom view. I only have access to the custom view. I have FTP-R privileges, but not W privileges. So if I don't have W privileges, what am I not able to do? I'm not able to write or save. Not able to save the job. So it allows me to pull it up, I can make changes, but I can't save it back down. So that means when it power cycles, it goes back to whatever it was at default. And I don't have the ability to save online. But I do have the ability to go offline and online. Okay, so that's our operator. Then the final one is monitor. And monitor is exactly that. It's like you have a piece of glass between you and the machine. You do not have any access to the system at all. You cannot add tools, cannot subtract tools, you cannot change privileges on anything. You have custom view, that's what you see, but if there's any buttons, any pull downs, anything, you have no access to it. It's like hitting a piece of glass between it. You have no access to it. You can just stare at it. You cannot go online or offline, and you cannot save while you're online. So that's just like I said, a piece of glass standing there looking at it. You're just monitoring it. That's it. By default, we don't put any passwords on those. If you put a password on it, please remember it. Guess what happens if you forget it? What we're going to tell you. Reset to factory default. Your usernames and passwords are going to be saved in the proc.set file. So if you reset to factory defaults, all your usernames and passwords gets wiped out, and it goes back to admin, operator, and monitor, all with no password. Now your jobs aren't removed, so don't worry about that. You do a reset to factory default, your jobs are still there. You're just going to need to go back in, set up your user list, set up your I/O, set up whether the job starts as soon as it powers up or not. But that's far better than having to get a new unit. You can also say what your displayed image settings is. So your camera's still processing at full res. It's just what it's going to display on your display, it's doing at half res by default. If you want it to be full res, you just have to go in there and change it over to full res. So every time you go with live mode, it will go into full res. Now online, it says by default optimize. And what optimize really means is it's looking at the device that you're writing to. If you're writing to Vision View and you're displaying 9 units, it's going to give it at quarter res because it knows it's only trying to fill up a little image that big. So this way it can back off on the bandwidth issues and stuff and only show you what you're really looking for. Now if all of a sudden you go to the full res mode of that one, then it's going to pop up to full res. Once again, it's optimizing depending on the device that you're looking at, as well as your bandwidth. Once again, behind the scenes, it's all processing at full res. Okay, so you don't have to worry about that. This is only display. You also have reset. People have asked us for a soft reset. So you don't actually have to physically go out there and power cycle the unit, that you can hit reset and it will manually power cycle the unit for you. So that's your sensor menu. Then you have your system menu. And your system menu really has to do with your PC, your Inside Explorer environment. And some of the things in there is logging on, logging off, whether you want to log on to all the systems or log off to all the systems all at once. You can also go into, we'll talk a little bit more later about system options, that you can have the program automatically start up as a certain person. Now by default, the program automatically starts up as admin. But if you have this down on the line, is that how you think you want to have it start up? What might you want to use? Either operator or maybe monitor. Whatever your default state would be. You know, maybe it is that everyone's operator, so that would work great. Maybe it is that they need to know how to get to operator before you do it. But you don't want it to be admin, because if they figure out all they have to do is shut down Inside Explorer and start it back up again, and now they have admin privileges. Now another thing I highly recommend is when you've got your application all ready to go, you're about to deploy, create a report. What the report does is just does a little HTML file, and it gives you a snapshot of the camera at that time. It'll give you what the name is, the IP address, the MAC ID. It'll tell you what all your IOs were set up as. It will tell you what your username and password is. It won't tell you what the password actually is. There's no way for us to tell you what the password is. Every place that it is, it's encrypted. Now then there's also the backup. Because what we want to do is we want to say, okay, this thing's about to deploy, let me back it up. And what the backup's going to do is it's going to save over the proc.set file, all the jobs, whatever the current image is, whatever the current host table is, and it's going to save it all over to your PC, whatever you have stated for your backup location there. So it's going to save it all over to the PC. Beautiful. Because, believe it or not, sometimes the magic smoke gets out of the camera. And the rule is if you can't get all the smoke back in within a minute, camera's bad. So what can happen is that all of a sudden the camera breaks and everything, and what you want to do is you want to restore it. So what you would want to do is you'd want to get a camera of the same type that the other one was. And chances are you probably want to connect to the same IP address. That just makes it easier. It makes things a lot easier if you already connect with the same IP address, because you're already pulling that one off. Therefore, you would connect up to the camera, do the add sensor utility, get connected to it. Then you're going to do a restore. And what restore is doing, I know it says restore from, ignore this. What restore does is it will go to whatever the last backup is for that camera and bring it over. So your proc.set file comes over, all your settings come over, all your jobs come over, and it's ready to go. It's going to be exactly like the other camera is, barring any lens changing that you've done to it, as well as the MAC ID and serial number. We know those two are different. They have to be different. Okay, so great. Camera's up and running again. Just adjust your, your physical environment, and you should be off and running. Beautiful. Now, Johnny came to this class. He really came just for the drinks and the cookies in the afternoon. So he was sitting there saying, okay, kind of nodding off in the afternoon. He remembered, yeah, when I have problems, that's right, I've got to do a backup and then a restore. So all of a sudden, the system's having problems. He goes, okay, backup, restore. Backup, restore. Ugh, it's not working. Backup and restore. Ugh. Now first, what did Johnny do wrong? Backed up garbage. So with restore, it will always grab whatever the last backup is. So if you've just backed up garbage, you have now just restored garbage. Garbage in, garbage out. So that's when you say, Johnny, could you please just move away from the machine for just a moment and any sharp objects. And then you're going to go do a restore from. What restore from does is shows you all the possible ones you could have. In fact, it shows you, because each time you do a backup, it's going to start incrementing your folders. So like the first one is AD000, then it's 001, 002, so forth. So now you can look back, and there's going to be a timestamp there, and you're going to say, oh, wait, Johnny started right around here. I'm going to go for a couple days before. That one's probably good. Restore from that point. Do a backup real quick, just so the next person doesn't have to like slam their head against the wall. And then you should be off and running again. So all restore from does is allows for you to choose from another location other than the most recent backup. Let's say that you have your program all set up just perfectly, and you want to put it on different devices now. Now, why wouldn't you just do a restore? The IP address is what got you. When you do a restore, the IP address for each of the individual ones are going to be the same. The whole idea on a network is you want them to be individual. Now, I had one person, but what if they're all operating separate on separate networks? Okay, it's still probably a bad idea to have all the same IP address. Now, what if you say, well, what if I just bring the jobs over? Okay, well, what's the problem with just bringing jobs over? What about the settings? What about your usernames? What about that? So now if you bring the proc.set file over, that's the same as doing a restore. Now you're back to the issue with the IP settings. So what clone does is clone allows for you to bring everything over like you would a restore, except for your network settings, because it knows the network settings have to be unique for each of the units. So it leaves your network settings alone. Everything else it ports over. Updating firmware. When we ship the devices, we ship it with whatever the current firmware is actually etched into the memory of the camera. We ship them with a certain version already on them. So let's say that you just bought one today. It's going to be shipped with 4.9. So whether it's 4.90, 4.91, let's say we come out with 4.92 tomorrow, you can still keep upgrading that camera. Now let's say tomorrow, let's say next week we come out with 5.0. And 5.0 has the psychic tool. Just does what you want it to do. Even when you think you're programming it, it just knows what you want. Okay, so everyone wants this tool. The problem is that when you go to cut over in manufacturing, how quick does things cut over? Takes a while. So the problem is customers who have purchased a firmware update program, so they're allowed to upgrade their cameras for up to a year to whatever the new versions are, they're wanting that new software. They're like, well, mine's about to expire in 2 weeks. You just came out with 5.0. Let me download that and get my camera up, right? So what'll happen is that we'll go ahead and put it out on the web as soon as we release it, and then our manufacturing is catching up with changing it over to all the cameras. So if you buy a new camera, let's say on Monday, we just released on Friday, chances are it won't have 5.0 on it. It's going to say, oh, you don't have a registration key when you go to update it. And you're going to be like, but I bought this camera because it had the psychic tool. So what'll happen is just call a Cognex. And what we're going to do is we're going to verify that you bought the camera after the time that we released the version. If you did, then what we'll probably do is just give you the firmware update key for that version. The other time that we might just give you the FUP key is if you have a stop work bug. Now, chances are you've already been working with Cognix at this point because you have a stop work bug. Engineering doesn't want to keep doing multiple paths of the product. So even though 491 might have the stop work bug, 50 might have it fixed. So what we'll do is we'll give you the FUP, the key to allow for that PC to upgrade non-version cameras to the new version. And we'll say, check it out, make sure it fixes it. As long as it fixes it, we say, well, thank you very much. I hope you have a nice day. If you're running the emulator, you're running at whatever version the emulator's at. Now, if my emulator, so let's say I'm running 5.0. Let's say I got the pre-release version of 5.0. If I'm running 5.0 and I connect on to this camera, it knows this camera is 4.9 and will only show me 4.9 functionality. So that psychic tool that I keep joking about, I won't see that. If I'm just using my emulator, I'll see it because that's running at 5.0. But as soon as I connect to that camera, it knows it's 4.0, so it doesn't offer it to me. But one of the things I want to caution with is that let's say that you're doing a program on, let's say 4.9, and your camera's at 4.4. So you're doing the program, great, great, great. You bring it over to 4.4, and it starts throwing you errors. Now first, if you're not using any of the functions that did not exist in 4.4, the only error you will get is this is a version mismatch. Do you want to continue? Because it knows you've got a newer version coming back to an older version. And all you have to say is, OK, continue. And then if you didn't do anything bad, that's all you have to do. Backs it up to the older version, you're good to go. Otherwise, if all of a sudden you're using the flexible flaw tool that does not exist on 4.4, then it will start throwing up errors saying, can't do anything like this, and basically does a apostrophe # in front of your function and basically comments them out of your program. Doesn't know what they are. So you've got to be careful about that. You've got to definitely be careful about that. Now, if you go into these system options, there's a ton of stuff you can get there. So one of the things that you can do is you can automatically have it start up when Windows starts up. You can also force someone to have a password to exit it, so people just doesn't exit it on the fly. They have this Cognix directory server mode, and this was supposed to allow for you to connect to your enterprise server and have your company username and password govern the cameras. They're backing that out of the system. You can also emulate the different cameras. Now, if I emulate a 5600 versus a 5400, there is no difference. Doesn't change CPU speeds. In fact, these don't depend on the speeds of your emulator. Your emulator's using the CPU of your PC. So that's not the camera. If you need bench testing, talk with them to actually have the different cameras and do some benchmarking with that. But what it does do is it lets you see what tools are available, such as, hey, I have this 7210. Why don't I see my PatMax tool? But yeah, it'll let you see what your tools are. Okay, you'll see what tools are on for that level. It also lets you get to color. So in case you're not sure whether to buy a color camera or not, if you have color images, bring them on in, try them out with the color tools. All the versions are in there. Also, one other thing I should comment. If you're using a high-res camera, so you're using, let's say, a 5605, the 5-megapixel camera, and all of a sudden you put it on your emulator and you're only seeing like a quarter of the image, it's because the emulator is still trying to look at a 640 by 480 image. So it's only grabbing that much of your image. So you need to emulate a 5605 to get the correct resolution of the image to come through. The reason that if I log on to the 5605 is Inside Explorer is smart enough to know, oh, I've got this resolution here. Let me adjust for it. But the emulator is not. The emulator, you need to actually tell it how much resolution you're expecting that image to be. This is also where you can put your offline programming references. By default, you can use the emulator if you have hardware sitting on your network. If it doesn't see hardware, it won't let you use the emulator, unless you put this key in. This key is freely available. It's a registry edit to your system. It's good for the life of your hard drive. It is not version specific. It is just Insight specific. So it allows for your Insight to act in emulator mode without any hardware being there. It's available for you, freely available. You can either get it online or you can call up our tech support and they can give it to you over the phone. You can also set what your FTP port is as well as your backup directory here. That image saturation, remember whether things are blue or red? This is where I set the thresholds for it. So right now, anything that's 5 grayscale value or below it will show up blue on my image. Anything that's 240 grayscale value or above it will show up red. So I can adjust that if I need it to be a little bit more picky. IPsec rules, just in case you're using IPsec. Your job view, if you're using just spreadsheets, you probably want to go check Make Spreadsheet your default view so that it stops going into Easy Builder every single time you start up. So I highly recommend you switch it over to that. Locked connection, remember those people bumping you off? This is where you can lock it. So as long as your emulator is connected to the camera, they can't get to it. And then as soon as you shut off Inside Explorer, then they can get access to the camera again. And also, if you're sick of it asking you, do you want to go online? Do you want to go offline? You can turn that off. We also have some record defaults. This is the defaults that are going to come up when I do the record options. So if I don't like how it's always set up, I can make some type of default options so it's always going to a certain directory. My user interface. By default, it will grab whatever the language is of the Windows operating system. Otherwise, I can force it to be a certain language in there. Also, just in case I'm using like a big screen and I want my icons to be bigger, not because my eyes are going really bad and I can't see anything anymore, but I can make my tool bar bigger, and I can also make the tool tree bigger. So everything looks bigger to me when I'm taking a look at the program. So let's talk a little bit about the Vision View. Vision View is meant to see the system when you are in production. We started with the Vision View 700, 7-inch touchscreen, color monitor, had 4 PoE ports and a LAN port. Gave us 3 USB connections. Good to go. People loved it. They're like, oh, that's so cute. But then they're like, it's small. Can we get something bigger? This just. So we said, okay. So we started taking a look at things, and we said, how much money would it be for us to make a bigger screen? Well, pretty expensive. Something that customers wouldn't want to buy. But we saw that flat panels were dropping in price. Flat panels are dropping in price and everything. And so we said, okay, well, what if we do this? What if we take the Vision View software and put it on the PC? And then your PC can drive any of the monitors that are coming out, whether it be HDMI or through your VGA or whatever. You can drive those big monitors. That's great. And we'll license it to the PC. So you have one license per PC to run Vision View. Beautiful. People said, that's great. Now I can get my nice big screen monitor. I can connect Vision View up to it. That's great. So our Vision View PC software was born. But people were like, ooh, Johnny's over there playing games on the computer. He's figured out how to get behind there and get, behind the Vision View. This isn't working for us. Also, I really can't have a PC out on the line. Can we have any other options? So what we did is we said, okay, what if we give you a shoebox PC? And what I mean by that is it's got a USB port, it's got a VGA port, it's got power into it. But basically, it's running Windows CE underneath it, just like our Vision View 700 is, so there's not a full Windows-blown operating system. It's just what we need to run Vision View. You're never going to know that it's a PC of sorts, because it's like an industrial. Like I said, it's basically Vision View 700, rip off the monitor and let you use whatever VGA monitor you want. So people are like, oh, that's cool. Okay, you can't play games on it anymore. It's just Vision View. That's great. So thus our Vision View VGA adapter was born. Didn't need licensing because the hardware itself was the license. Same with the Vision View 700. The hardware itself was the license. So people were like, oh, that was great. But then they were like, I've got too many monitors around. I'd like to have Vision View as part of my PLC. Now, I know you guys automatically come out with the display control. And I could add the ActiveX display control to my HMI, but that allows people into the spreadsheet. I don't want them in the spreadsheet. I only want them in Vision View. So can we do Vision View much like you do the PC? And that's where we came out with Vision View CE. So on certain of the CE panel displays and stuff for the PLCs, both Siemens and Rockwell, we can put our software on there, Vision View on it. And once again, it's going to be licensed, so it's one per system and everything. But now it just shows up as an extra window within your PLC application as opposed to having another monitor. Now, since then, we also came out with a Vision View 900, which is basically the Vision View 700, but with a 9-inch display. A little bit more optimized, doesn't have PoE switch on it anymore. So the whole idea behind it is that it can either show your custom view if you're using spreadsheets, or it can show your easy view if you're using Easy Builder. So the whole idea behind it is that we want to connect to units. Now remember, we can connect to up to 9 units. Now the Vision View 700 by default only had 5 ports. So 4 of them was PoE, 1 was a LAN connection. So I could either connect like a PC up to it so I could program them and then have the other 4 connected to the PoE ports. Or I could take that LAN connection, bring it out to a switch, and bring in even more cameras so that I can have up to 9 cameras that I display at a given time. I also had the USB ports on there. So the idea behind the USB ports was allow us to back up and restore the system on something, that we can save images out of it, maybe load jobs over and everything to it. Also, if you need a keyboard or a mouse, USB can connect right in there. Now you have your keyboard and mouse connected up to it. We had thought that we might connect Cognex to it, some of the other products. We found out the hard way, USB in factory environments doesn't work. We do have some of the other products coming over, like the newer Datamans can be seen on Vision View. It's just all through Ethernet now. Now the job status, it automatically lets you know what's going on with the job status, and this is going to be tied to your results queue. So if you don't have anything set up in your results queue, then basically it's going off of A0, so it thinks that everything is good. But otherwise, if you set something up in your results queue for your watch cell, it'll be controlled by that. You can go in there, you can turn things online, offline, you can go into live mode, you can switch your views, you can see your tiled view or not your tiled view. Now, if you're in a tiled view, you will not see your custom user interface. If you come out of it just to the single view, you will. You can also go into Inside Explorer, and you can set up the camera to allow for this split view too. And the split view allows for you to show whatever the last failed image is on a separate pane on your screen than what's currently going on. So what this allows for you to do is quickly look up, and you can see, is my system still in failure? Or do I just see what that last failure is, and then I see that it's currently still running? So your option is going to be tied to your user control. So whatever your user level is, all the Insight stuff comes over to Vision View. So if I have access to be able to turn on and off my jobs, or load and save them, I'll have them here. If I don't, I won't see it. Also, that results queue, that pause, the freeze and everything, ties right into Vision View as well. So you don't have to go back into Inside Explorer to adjust it. You can adjust it right from your Vision View. When you go to set it up, you're going to be given the option of either auto find, or you can manually go in and choose your cameras. Please do not do the auto. If you do the auto, you will grab other people's cameras and you won't let them be able to look at it. Now, one of the newer things with Vision View as of 4.9 is now more than one system can see the image at a given time. Up until this point, if something was logged onto the system, nothing else could log onto it. That's still kind of the case, but they got around it with Vision View. And how they got around it is basically you get a read-only screen. So you don't have any access to any of the custom view or anything during that time, but if someone with Inside Explorer logs onto the system, you can say how many Vision Views can at least see what's going on to the system. So when they log on to it, the person down on the floor doesn't lose connection. They still have it, they just don't have access. Like if they need buttons or something, it's not there because the Inside Explorer has it. But at least it allows for that person downstairs to say, oh, okay, it's still running, it's still moving well. I think it does say someone's logged on to it and that it's in read mode. But at least you know what's still going on with the system right now. So we talked a little bit about the sensor menu. We talked a little bit about the system menu, about being all about that PC. We talked about how backup and restore is a great efficient way to replace the systems when they've gone bad. And then we've also talked a little bit about how Vision View can be used in your production environment. So let's try this out. So I wanted to make sure I saved my program. This is a big deal because I'm about to lose stuff. I'm going to power cycle it, and I don't want to lose my whole custom view. So now the first thing that I want to do is I want to set up a user list. So if I go underneath Sensor, and I go underneath User Access Settings, it gives me my defaults: Admin, Monitor, and Operator. So I want to add one. I'm going to add, and who I'm going to add is I'm going to add Diana. Diana's my dog. I've been teaching her Insight. Now, I'm not going to give her a password. She probably can remember better than I can, but if it's not stake, she wants nothing to do with it. So I'm just going to leave the password default. Now, her access, I'm going to give her protected access. I will allow for her to go online and offline. I will allow her to read, so therefore load a job, but I'm not going to allow her to save a job. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and say OK, and now Diana exists in that list. So I'm just going to go ahead and say OK right now. And who am I logged in as at this moment? Admin. So if I go up to System, where's my log on, log off? I'm going to go to Diana and say log on. And now it's going to just log off for a moment, log me on as Diana. So Diana's sitting right up here. And notice I have my custom view. I can't go back into the spreadsheet because I only have, since I have protected access, I don't have access to the spreadsheet. Now if I take a look at my file, notice I can open a job. I can't save a job. And if I go underneath sensor, let's say if I do user access settings, I can't add, okay? Because I don't have full access to it. I don't have the admin privileges. So I can see it, I just can't do anything about it, okay? But I can go ahead and go online. I can hit the gouge, move it around. So it's all working beautifully. You know, I have everything set up. Now Diana says, okay, that's cool, but maybe I want to connect to my PC. So my PC's name's Dusty. So if I double click on Dusty, notice I can't get into it. Why not? Why don't I have privileges? Because Diana does not exist on my PC user list. So because Diana doesn't exist there, she's not allowed to be on my PC. If I go back to Bonnie here, and it says it's locked, and that's because it's still sitting there. If I go my window, here's Bonnie. It's already there. So that's where I exist. I can't get onto my PC because the user list doesn't exist there. Okay? Diana was only created on this particular camera. Now if I get back out, let me just go System, log on, log off. I'm going to log on as admin now. Let's go view, put me into easy builder mode. So let's just get back to spreadsheet. And there I go. I'm back at being admin, full privileges on everything, good to go. So now the next thing I might want to do is I want to run a report. So I'm going to say create report. What do I want to create a report of? Create a report of Bonnie. Create a report. I'm going to put it on my desktop. So let me just say, okay, my report was created. I'm just going to minimize this. And right here, here's Bonnie HTML. If I open this up, it tells me what my MAC ID is, my serial number, my version. It tells me what network I'm on and everything, what my host name is. Keep going down. Shows me who my users are. Note, does not tell me what my passwords are. Okay. Helps me go down to I/O. Beautiful thing. In fact, it keeps going down, and then it starts telling me all about the current job in there. Ooh, fun, fun, fun. A lot of information, huh? So beautiful. So there's my report. Highly recommended it to use. Now, the next thing that I want to do is I want to go into this, and I want to create a backup, okay, because it's ready to deploy now, and I'm going to go up to my system, backup. It asks me what camera do I want to back up. I want to back up Bonnie. I'm going to back it up in the generic directory. And then I say backup. Da, 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 da. So now if I take a look at that directory, it's going to be C, Program Data, Cognix, Insight, Insight Explorer 491, Backups directory, and there's Bonnie 000, and it was done on 11/5 at 4:11. Okay? If I open that up, it has all the jobs that were inside my camera, okay, and it also has whatever my current image is underneath the camera. Saves that there. Host table. Beautiful little set of information. So now what I can do is I can go back in there and let me go down to my actually sensor, discrete I/O settings, and maybe I want to set this back to default. So I'm going to say line 0. Maybe space 0, and set this back to user data. Clean it up. Go ahead and say OK. So now if I go in there and I say system restore, it says, well, it only offers me what I've backed up. So I've only backed up Bonnie. So if I say restore, it's letting me know, OK, you know, we're about to restore here. Are you sure? Yep. So what it does, loads everything back over. And then it's going to restart my system. Now, a couple of things that I found with restore. If the jobs are already in the camera and what's being restored is the same name as the job, it will overwrite it. If you have added new jobs since the last backup, it won't remove them. So it's not like it gets rid of the jobs that are there. All that it does is it will make sure whatever jobs you saved with your backup comes over. That's all that it does. So if you have this extra job that you've just created, don't worry about that. You're not going to lose it. It's still going to be sitting in the memory of the camera. So it's power cycling, and the camera to power cycle, especially on the 7000, usually takes a couple of minutes. Okay, so since I didn't automatically load what that job is, it doesn't show it. But let me just get at least down to, if I take a look and I take a look at what my job is, so open jobs, notice that all my jobs are technically still there. Come on. They're still there, as I brought them back over again. But one of the things that you'll find is if I go back underneath sensor, discrete I/O settings, and I reset that thing to input 0, but now it's showing button again. Why is that? Well, what it is I changed it after I did my backup. So what it is anything you've changed after your backup, all that gets ignored, and it goes back to what it was at that point that you did the backup. Right. So that's why those things got thrown out. So the one more thing I want to do is I'm just going to leave this running right now. And I'm going to go to the PC view, the Vision View PC demo. This is version 163. It's the exact same thing as the PC version, except for it times out after 45 minutes. So it's just demoing for us. Since this is the first time I've used it, I'm going to say, yes, I want English, thank you. And it's going to go out there and it's going to see, well, what systems do I have out there? Now, I don't want to do an auto, because that's going to grab all your guys' cameras. I don't want that. I'm going to say manually select sensor, remove all of these, and it's going to go out there and it's going to detect again, but not only is it going to detect my cameras, it also lets me detect my emulator. This is to allow our sales engineers to demo the product without ever actually having hardware. Because we can demo with our emulator, demo the Vision View off the PC. Isn't that pretty? So I'm going to bring over Bonnie, and I'm going to bring over Dusty. So let me go ahead and say OK. And now if I go ahead and run it, it goes in and it tries to connect to them. Now right now it's letting me know that my system is locked. That's because I've locked my connection. Vision View does not have the right to kick off Inside Explorer. So right now my Inside Explorer is connected to both of these. So if I go underneath and I just say System Log On, Log Off, I could close Inside Explorer, but I don't want to go through having to close it. So I've just logged off of everything. So now it's going to show my emulator, and also it's connecting to Bonnie right now, and it's going to show my system. So if I go over to here, click right on this, and I could say, okay, what are my options? My options, let me load my job, open, yes, let's load it in there, loading up my job nicely. Let's say done, and go ahead and go online. Yep, I want to go online, and sure enough, off and running. If I want to move my gouge, I can move my gouge again, say OK, and off and running. If I can switch my views, image only, image with graphics, image with custom view if I have one. I can also say all my sensors, so now I can go into this one if I want, whatever I want. It's pretty neat, pretty cool. Let you play with it.